Hello, I'm UK astronaut Tim Beek, and I'd like to welcome you to this Learn Live broadcast. There are many exciting career opportunities with science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and I'd like to encourage you to explore all of those opportunities that are out there, in particular those that you'll find through these Learn Live broadcasts.
Echo Kilo, contact tower with your call sign only, 124.225. Easy 12 Whiskey Tango, turn left heading 325.
Heading 325, easy 12 Whiskey Tango. Easy 90 Alpha X-ray, stop.
Easy 90 Alpha X-ray, 160 knots until 5 miles. Easy 90 Alpha X-ray, contact tower with your call sign only, 124.225. Goodbye.
I'm Jenna MacGregor and I'm a Senior Operational Meteorologist working for the Met Office at Gatwick Airport. So my day starts by coming in and having a look at what the weather's doing outside the window. We need to know what's going on so that we can start forecasting the future. And then I look at satellite imagery, looking at radar, looking at different observations, just building up a really solid picture of the weather. And I do that through briefings throughout the day, face-to-face or on telephones or in large room briefings with lots of people watching you, so it can be quite an intense role. I think the main thing about my job is an interest in the meteorology, and mine was first sparked when I was on holiday when I was younger. I saw this amazing thunderstorm with hail that smashed through plastic furniture and damaged cars. When I came home I thought that was really interesting and I just went on and found out a bit more about it. So some of the main skills you'll need are communication, team working and organisational skills. And out of those, the most important I'd say is communication, because there's no point knowing what the weather's doing if you're not going to tell anyone about it. So one of the main things I love about my job is that I've had the ability to work in lots of different places. I started off working as a meteorologist in defence, working with helicopters and search and rescue teams, and with that I then ended up working overseas. I spent 7 months on a tropical island, and I finally ended up at Gatwick Airport, where I'm working with my team building skills, managing a small team and working quite closely with my customer, which is great. So my background is in maths and environmental science, which I found really challenging, but I also really enjoyed, and I would encourage anyone to do the sort of same subjects. Find something you really enjoy and follow on that path. Anything sort of maths or science related is great if you want to follow a career in meteorology.
Well, look, thank you so much for joining us this morning for Learn Live with Gatwick Airport. Great for you to tell us a little bit more about your role. The questions are starting to come in from the schools. So before we get on to them, I just thought I'd get you to sort of introduce yourself to the schools and exactly what you do there. So I know you sort of briefly told us earlier, but what does a senior operational meteorologist actually do? What's that title actually mean? Can you break that down for us, please?
Yeah, so it's looking at the weather, and he's looking at current weather conditions and forecasting the next few hours, the next few days, and actually we do up into the next few weeks, just so that the team at Gatwick can start doing their planning, doing some contingency forecasts if there's any bad weather on the horizon. And it's just flagging those up, knowing our customer, knowing the impacts, sorry, and working with them to make sure they're as prepared as possible.
Brilliant. I'm just waiting to see if our camera. Oh, there we are. Our camera is working now. We've got it up and running. That's great. So we're seeing their shots live from the runway, and it's looking a bit cloudy out there. What's the definition of that from your point of view, from the work you do? We don't call it cloudy, do you?
No, yeah, well, cloudy day, quite overcast. We basically divide the sky into eighths, and if the whole of the sky is covered, it's a completely overcast day. You can't see any blue out there. This is actually, we've had a front coming through here this morning, so we're sort of in between two fronts. It's quite a grey. Could see a few outbreaks of light rain and drizzle, and then there'll be another band of rain that comes through here later this afternoon into the evening time, and then after that should start to see a little bit of an improvement.
So we saw you on that video talking to teams of people. What sort of people are you talking to on a daily basis? Because I know it's important for them to know the weather, but what's in the organisation you work in there at Gatwick? Who needs to know about the weather the most?
So my main customer I work with is the operations team. So they're really interested in looking at the runway. So in winter, is there going to be any ice or any snow? Is there going to be any fog? Because that means that we can't drive about or move about the airfield as easily. And in summer, it's looking at temperatures. How warm is the temperature going to be? Is the ground going to be really, really hot, because that can affect the runway surface. So there's always different things to be looking at with them. We also work with air traffic. We're again making sure that aircraft can land and take off easily, and looking at things that might disrupt aircraft on their approach in and out. We work with the airlines. We have to produce weather forecasts in a coded format, and they use that to quickly sort of identify different weather conditions at different airports across the UK, and so pilots can get a really quick idea of what's happening with the weather.
Yeah, because I suppose you're connected to the other airports as well, because it's not just about your team taking off, but also for them landing. So you have to work with the other airports around the country, and in fact around the world, advising them what the weather is doing at Gatwick.
Yes, we have to look, I mean, for ourselves, even at Gatwick, we have to know what's going on at destination and route airports, because if there's any disruption there, it could lead to disruption at Gatwick, or conditions en route as well. For example, great big thunderstorms mean aircraft tend to have to go round them, which can then add extra time to your journey, and those are delays. And then the airport has to try and compensate for that, and try and make things come back onto time and rejig the schedule, really.
Fantastic. So obviously we've got a lot of young people going to be watching this later as well as watching it now. So from a young person's perspective, you mentioned there you got into this after a family holiday and watching what sounds like a really impressive thunderstorm. But seriously, when did you actually sort of in school, was it certain subjects that inspired you to do this? Just tell us a little bit about your journey from school to where you are now, please, Jenna.
Yeah, I was really interested in geography. That was one of the main subjects I liked. I have to say I wasn't very interested in maths or physics, but it was as I sort of developed my interest in weather forecasting that those subjects really suddenly started to come to life for me, and I actually suddenly realised how much I did enjoy them, and that's what then sort of helped me along my journey. So I'd already decided I wanted to be a weather forecaster, and it was just sort of building upon these subjects that helped me go along.
So did you go to college and university? Can you just talk us through what qualifications you took?
Yeah, so I went to college and I studied specific subjects to get onto weather forecasting. So I did maths, chemistry, environmental science, and a bit of IT as well. And then I went on to do a degree in actual meteorology and oceanography. I was really interested in studying the ocean patterns. It was all related to the weather, but eventually came back round to doing weather forecasting, which I'm now still doing and really love.
And at that time, Jenna, were you thinking of Gatwick Airport, or were you thinking of just, I mean, potentially getting involved with reading the weather on TV? Because I suppose that's what people often see, someone telling you what the weather's going to be. I mean, did you know at that time you'd end up in an airport, or was that not really planned in at that time?
Not at all. I think in the back of my mind, I was thinking about weather presenting on the television. I'd seen, obviously, we all see them on the TV every day, and it was only when I really sort of became immersed in weather forecasting that I started to realise all the different areas that you use weather forecasting, like retail, aviation, as well as media sort of companies. So that was when I sort of got really involved that I realised the sort of scope of the role.
And just can you remember can you remember applying for the role and what you put on your CV, just to help young people maybe get be more successful when applying for roles? Can you remember what you did to make sure you got an interview?
The main thing I did was talk about my passion for the weather and how interested I am in it and why I'm interested in it. I think to do this every day, to talk about the weather all the time, you have to really be interested in it. Part of my role is sometimes in certain places is to go outside and take observations every hour, looking at how much cloud you've got, and to want to go out in the pouring rain and when it's windy and or snowing, you know, you've really got to have that passion and that interest.
Absolutely. And talking about the weather, it's looking a little bit overcast there. I mean, getting some fantastic shots of the planes taking off. And thank you for sharing that with us this morning. We saw you using a little bit of technology in the video as well, and that's one of the questions we had. It was how much technology do you use in your job? I'm sure you don't just go outside and put a finger in the air and go, yes, it's going to rain today. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. So tell us the sort of tech that you're using on a day-to-day basis, please.
So it starts off with taking the observation. So it does start off with going outside and taking your measurements, but we then put that into a computer, which goes into our computer models. The models sort of run ahead and they take different weather conditions, and we then look at these using sort of computers and looking at the different variations, comparing the now to like what the model thinks is happening now to what's actually happening, and then taking with the background knowledge and my theoretical understanding and rolling that into the future, seeing if the computer models look realistic. So it's a lot of sort of interpreting data, that side of things.
Yeah, and it seems we're getting better at reading the weather. I mean, have you noticed a shift in the technology you're using? Is it getting better at predicting, you know, storms and snow and all the things that you need to know about?
Well, the Met Office recently invested in a supercomputer, and it's just increasing the sort of model capacity that we have. I mean, 5-day forecasts now are more accurate, or about as accurate as the 1 to 2 day forecasts used to be 20, 30 years ago. So we are seeing that improvement, and just as our technology improves, we should continue to see an improvement in the accuracy.
And for somewhere like the airport, Jenna, I mean, how far ahead do they need to plan? I mean, people going away, like on holiday, they always like to know, don't they, 5 days ahead, if it's going to be a nice weekend. But for you, I mean, what's important? Is it literally that day, or is it a couple of days projection? What's important for you in the airport?
Well, it varies on who I talk to, really. The main focus tends to be in the next 12 to 24 hours. What can we do to make sure the airport stays running in that short period of time? But we are doing contingency forecast. We are starting to look at the planning, you know, 5 days, if there looks like there is some really hazardous weather, what can the airport start to do to sort of mitigate against that? So, for example, if we think there's going to be big thunderstorms, they could make sure that the planes are refueled a few days earlier, or like the day before, or start to plan when they're going to be doing major operations and things like that.
Brilliant. Just give us a sense of the people you work with then, because it's not just you, I guess. There's a team there that you work with, and who do you report into ultimately?
So our team at the Met Office is quite small. There's just 4 of us here, but we work quite closely with our expanded network. We have our headquarters in Exeter, who I'm talking to every day, other forecasters in airports across the London area and further afield. We're sort of liaising with them, making sure that we're sort of all on the same page, and also looking for any disruption down the line might affect the weather here at Gatwick.
And qualifications wise, you've already mentioned what you took at uni. What qualifications do you need for that role that you're in now, Jenna?
Something maths related, some science, but geography is also equally as good. It's just having that sort of grounding. There is some theoretical knowledge that you need to know, some equations, but maths and some physics or chemistry is really great.
And is there anything you can do on the work experience front? Because obviously that helps you when it comes to applying and getting the interview and being successful. Did you do any sort of work experience you think that's helped you ultimately get that role?
I started off at the Met Office as an apprentice when I was just doing observations, and I worked on our customer service phones. The Met Office also do work experience programs which you can get involved with, but anything where you can sort of, before that, when I was 16, I worked with some radio stations, just showing sort of communication skills, because obviously it's really important to be able to tell people about the weather. But yeah, there's lots of work experience opportunities.
Brilliant. And I'm just reading some of the questions we're getting in as well as, you're in that room at the moment. I'm sure that's not your office. So where are you based at the airport? And also, does your job involve any travelling?
I'm based in the operations building, which is just in front of air traffic, and it has a brilliant view of the runway. We're right in front of it. Occasionally, actually, the room seems to rattle if we get the bigger aircraft going through when the wind's a certain direction. So yeah, we're right in the thick of it, and there's lots of opportunities to travel in my role. I'm in a previous position. I worked for the military, and I've been able to spend 7 months working on Ascension, which is a tropical island. We've got lots of opportunities to go abroad. There's places like Cyprus, so definitely lots to get involved with.
Okay. Everyone's fascinated with the weather this morning. I mean, you can tell we're from the UK, can't we? We love the weather in this country. Question, I don't know if you can answer this, but what sort of weather is dangerous for airplanes to fly in?
There's all sorts of weather that's dangerous. Thunderstorms are involved. Thunderstorms have great big clouds, which means the air is going up and down. So when you tend to see turbulence on your journey, those thunderstorms can cause severe turbulence. So that's very hazardous for the aircraft. Fog can be dangerous when you're landing. They do have instrument landings, which helps them, but they want to be able to see the runway before they get down. Snow is obviously a risk because icy conditions when you're trying to land the plane isn't great. Even when you're flying, if you're going through lots of cloud at a certain height, icing on the aircraft, that can lead to different aerodynamics on the plane. So it is really important for the pilots to know what's going on with the weather before they go.
Just a few more before we let you get on with the rest of your day, and I'm sure you're going to have a busy day ahead of you with the weather as it is. What sort of instruments do you use? And you mentioned there about the one you showed us on the video. Is that sort of a daily? Or what is that called? Because it looks a really cool piece of kit.
It's an anemometer, and that just basically measures the wind. The little cups catch the wind speed, and it tells the wind in knots. But there's other things like rain gauges. We need to know how much rain has fallen. We have visiometers, which measure the visibility, although it has one spot around the airfield. So we always like to use it by eyeball, looking at how the visibility is doing. We also have a celiometer, which measures the height from the ground to the cloud bases, because the height of the cloud is also really important. As I said, sort of the planes coming and going, they want to be able to see the runway when they come down.
I knew this question would come up. Do you sometimes get the weather wrong? I mean, I suppose you mentioned there about the supercomputer at the Met Office, but does it occasionally give you the wrong? Because I suppose weather can be unpredictable still, can't it?
There is an aspect of it. I mean, things come through a little bit faster, things come through a little bit slower, or more severe or less severe than you were forecasting. But we tend to have the right idea of something moving through. It just may be a little bit worse or a little bit better, and that's because a slight variation can cause in position can cause massive ripples, and it can change.
We're just going to get you in a second to give us a weather forecast, actually, for the weekend. That's okay. We may as well. But before we do that, just tell us what's next for you, because obviously you're working there in this senior role. I mean, what would you sort of like to be doing in the next few years? Have you got a plan?
Well, I'm actually now going to be off to Bermuda in the next few months, so unfortunately leaving Gatwick, but it was another travel opportunity which I was really excited for, and also hurricanes, which I'm really a little bit scared about, but we'll see how those go. So there's lots of opportunities, and again, I will be using some of my oceanography skills with that as well, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, the very best of luck with that opportunity. Maybe we can do a link up from Bermuda at some point, if that's
Definitely.
okay. Yeah, see how you're getting on. So yeah, as we promised, we're going to let the schools obviously do another set of questions for you in a second. But before we do that, I thought you might be able to give us a bit of a forecast for the next few days. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
So just tell us, what is the weather forecast for this weekend, please, Jenna?
Well, it depends where you are. In the southern parts of the UK, mainly central, southern, eastern England, it does look like it will be quite cloudy with outbreaks of rain, which may be heavy at times. But if you're further north, it tends to be, there will be some sunny intervals with a mixture of some showers. Those showers bring a risk of being heavy at times, possibly with some thunder as well. And then as we go, similar story for Sunday, but then Sunday into Monday, across the southern and central parts of the UK, we do have this band of very heavy rain that comes through, and a low risk. There is actually a warning out at the moment of high ground like the South and North Downs seeing some snow, although we're not expecting it to have any accumulations. So your journey to school on Monday morning likely to be quite wet. Might see some spray on the road, so maybe some slower travel, but there's a warning out for that, and we'll be updating it through the weekend.
Well, let's hope it improves, because we're just looking again at shots there of the airport. It's not looking very sunny at the moment. So you think we might get a bit of sun this weekend, possibly?
There might be a few sunny breaks, especially if you're up in the north, may see some sunshine, but in the south, generally, it's going to be a picture very similar to this.
Brilliant. And what's a long-term forecast for this summer? We're all anxious to know, are we going to get a bit of a summer this year? And any heat waves predicted that you can tell us about?
Well, it's difficult to say, unfortunately, because it's all model data, and slight changes now can cause massive ripples and changes in the long-term forecast. But on average, it does look like we will see a slightly wetter and slightly cooler than average. But as I say, it's all up for grabs. It could all change.
Very professional, Jenna. Thank you for that. We just want to, before we just come back to you for the last question, I just wanted to sort of remind schools the next live broadcast from Gatwick Airport is on the 18th of May. Delighted to have Vicky Martin from Border Force, very important role there at the airport, and we're hopeful that we're going to be joined by Bindi, one of her dogs as well, that she handles, which should be fantastic. I think we should give Bindi a screen of her own as well to talk to us. That'll be fun. So before you go, obviously, I want to just see if you can inspire other students to maybe follow in your tracks. I mean, what would you say then to a young person this morning who's maybe interested now in what you do, and what can they do to perhaps progress into that career, and what do they need to do at school?
I'd say just look at your maths, your science subjects, keep an eye on the weather. If you're interested in it, have a look at our weather forecast, see how they change. You could actually start looking at some weather charts, see if you can start interpreting it, where fronts are coming through, what do you think the weather's going to be doing with those, and that will just build up your interest, build up your knowledge. There are places you can get sort of your own mini weather stations, and we have areas where you can download your observations, and it creates this network which helps us as well, because we have more observations and more data to work from. And then just look at your subjects, think about how you could get to the future. So thinking about A levels in maths and science, and yeah, hopefully you should get here.
And it's a great place to work as well, Jenna, doesn't it? I mean, we're just looking again. Is it brightening up? It looks like it might be.
There are a few sunny breaks coming through, but there is that further rain to come across the south later today. So it is a bit positive.
I think we can see it. And there's another plane just taking off there as we finish today's live broadcast. Jenna, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us this morning, telling us a little bit about your role. Sounds absolutely fascinating. And also just want to wish you again the very best of luck for the future as well.
Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
And I also want to just thank your cameraman as well, who's been brilliant this morning, giving us some brilliant shots outside your window there across the runway. Thank you again, Jenna, and also thanks to the schools who joined us this morning. Again, just to remind you, a recording of this will be available in a few days' time on Learn Live and on the Gatwick Airport website. Have a great day, Jenna, and we'll see you again, hopefully, in the future. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. We're just going to leave the schools for a moment with shots of the airport. Just to remind you again that a recording of this will be available in the next few days. And so thank you so much for joining us this morning on Learn Live with Gatwick Airport. And just to remind you again that the next broadcast is on the 18th of May, and that's going to be with Border Force at 9 AM. That's the 18th of May at 9 AM. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.